On the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink, and here are the top stories. Candidates in Senegal's February 25 presidential elections sign National Pact for Democratic Governance ahead of polls.
As a member of the ASIS since 2008-2009, I commit to respecting all the conclusions and all the commitments. I have always done so. I will never fail to call on the people of the ASIS.
The African Union urges diplomacy as it calls for dialogue between ECOWAS and junta-led Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso. Togolese delegation visits Niamey for mediation amid ECOWAS exit announcement, and gunmen abduct traveling students and teachers in Nigeria's southwestern state of Ekiti. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining us and a warm welcome to our listeners in the Gambia, Ghana and Liberia. Well, let's begin here in Senegal as a handful of presidential candidates signed a national pact for good democratic governance a few weeks before the February 25 elections. The event, organized by the Civil Society Coalition in Dakar, was dedicated to implementing the outcomes of the National Conference and recommendations from the National Commission for Institutional Reform. Sankli Janko has more in this report.
A total of 9 out of the 20 presidential candidates have endorsed the National Pact for Good Democratic Governance. These candidates, all self-identified as opposition figures, include Khalifa Ababakar Sall, the former mayor of Dakar, Cherno Alassane Sall of the Republic of Values, and Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who is second in command for opposition politician Ousmane Sonko, represented at the ceremony. They have committed to making the outcomes of the National Conference held in 2008 a central focus in the upcoming presidential election. Khalifa Ababakar Sall, as a signatory of the pact, stands among the candidates dedicated to this cause.
As a member of the ASIS since 2008-2009, we are waiting for the implementation of what we had agreed on and which should put our country on a good path. And I commit to respecting all the conclusions and all the commitments. I have always done so. I will never fail to call on the people of the ASIS.
Bassirou Diomaye Faye, represented at the meeting on behalf of Ousmane Sonko, also affirmed the commitment to implement the conclusions of the 2008 National Conference. The discussions of that conference revolved around critical issues such as social cohesion, the rule of law, governance, heritage preservation, and the proper handling of public funds.
The conclusions of the seat for the candidate Bassirou Diomaye Faye are common, institutional, normative, dogmatic resources that go through all the programs of the political parties that are anchored in the path of the consolidation of the rule of law, in the path of the rehabilitation of the Republican Pact.
The coalition of civil society organizations leading this initiative extends an invitation to all other presidential candidates to join in endorsing the National Pact for Good Democratic Governance.
Sankli Janko filed that report. Meanwhile, the Elections Observation Mission to Senegal has announced its preparedness to effectively monitor the 25th February presidential polls in the country. 32 EU observers will be deployed to the various regions of the country beginning this Friday. Marlene Jork is the chief observer of the EU Elections Mission to Senegal.
Our 32 observers will be deployed on Friday already, and they will be deployed in teams of 2, so 16 teams, and they will cover all of Senegal. And they look forward and to go and see the preparations, speak to citizens, speak to the candidates, to parties, and all the actors active regionally. And I think this is a very important part of the European Union electoral observation mission, that we have this possibility and that we really use the information gathered by. It also means that we, of course, read the reports from other organizations about the situation in various fields, but in the end, we will also have our own ears and our own eyes in the field so that we can make our own assessment based on first-hand observations.
That was Marlene Diouk, the chief observer to the EU elections mission in Senegal here. Now, more than 72 hours after the military-led Sahelian states of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger announced their exit from ECOWAS, the African Union AU is calling for dialogue between the parties. The departure declared on Sunday seen by international relations experts as a setback to ECOWAS' regional integration goals, especially after the bloc had suspended these nations in the aftermath of coups. The AU had supported ECOWAS initiatives to reinstate democratic governance. Abdullah Hassan reports.
In a press release issued on Tuesday, Musa Faki Mahamat emphasized the imperative to consolidate all efforts to preserve the irreplaceable unity of ECOWAS and fortify African solidarity. The chairperson of the Pan-African Organization conveyed the full commitment of the Commission to offer all possible assistance for the success of fraternal dialogue devoid of any external interference. The announcement of the withdrawal of Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger from the Economic Community of West African States was made on Sunday. The regional body, in response to the joint statement, clarified on not receiving formal notifications and expressed its determination to seek a negotiated solution to the political impasse. On Monday, Burkina Faso's Minister of Foreign Affairs, Karamoko Jean-Marie Traoré, elucidated the implications of the decision on the state media RTB. Acknowledging the repercussions of the withdrawal from ECOWAS, he pointed out that member countries are bound by a treaty along with numerous additional protocols. Established in 1975 with its headquarters in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, ECOWAS aimed at fostering regional economic integration within member states.
Abdullah Hassan filed that report. Meanwhile, a Togolese delegation led by the Minister of Territorial Administration has arrived in Niamey to meet with the transitional authorities. His visit came shortly after Niger, alongside the two Sahel alliance states, cancelled their membership with the sub-regional organization ECOWAS. As Tawfiq Abdul Nasser reports, the outcome of the meeting is currently undisclosed.
In a discreet meeting behind closed doors, the Nigerian Minister of Defense, General Salif Modi, hosted the Togolese Minister of Territorial Administration, Colonel Hodabalo Awate. The nature of the discussions between the two officials has not been disclosed yet. This significant working visit follows Niger's recent announcement to withdraw from ECOWAS along with Mali and Burkina Faso. Togo is playing the role of a mediator between Niamey and ECOWAS despite the withdrawal decision. Last Thursday, Togolese mediators were in Niamey anticipating the arrival of an ECOWAS delegation to resume talks. However, the delegation failed to materialize, citing technical problems with the official aircraft. Niger's Prime Minister, Mohamed Lamine Zain, expressed dissatisfaction, labeling it as bad fate. According to international relations experts, the economic community of West African states remains crucial to Togo, as the country's former president, Gnassingbé Eyadema, was one of its founding fathers.
Tawfiq Abdul Nasser filed that report.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Let's bring you more stories now. In a related development, Guinean socio-political actors have expressed concerns over Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger quitting ECOWAS. They believe it is a serious decision with potential consequences for citizens of all three countries. Concerns heighten as the stakeholders fear Guinea's junta may follow suit, questioning its ability to adhere to the agreed electoral timetable with the West African Organization. Gubierica has more in this report by WDL's chairman of Ibrahim Abade in Conakry.
The withdrawal of Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger from ECOWAS is being closely monitored and interpreted in diverse ways by Guinean socio-political figures. According to Ba Uri, a former minister and president of the Union of Democrats for the Rebirth of Guinea party, this move will not be without consequences for the departing countries. On the other hand, the Guinean Civil Forum expresses concerns about potential contagion in Guinea, which is also under military governance. According to its president, Ibrahima Balaya Diallo, this withdrawal could be perceived as a strategy by the military to evade organizing elections and prolong their stay in power. In the wake of these concerns, the head of Guinean diplomacy recently affirmed the positive nature of relations with ECOWAS. Currently, the Guinean government, which was previously closely aligned with Mali and Burkina Faso, has not yet issued a response to the announced withdrawal of Bamako, Ouagadougou and Niamey from ECOWAS.
Ogibirika voiced that report filed in by our Conakry correspondent, General Alpha Ibrahim Abadi. Now let's head to Benin, where the Democrats and 3 other opposition parties have rejected the amendment of the electoral calendar for the 2026 general elections as requested by the Constitutional Court on January 4. During their meeting on Monday in the commercial capital Cotonou, the parties also opposed the government's proposed constitutional reform. Augustine Kohli completes the story.
Ahead of the general elections in 2026, the Benin opposition parties held consultations on the amendment of the Electoral Code and the revision of the Constitution on January 29, 2024. The Great Republican Solidarity, the New National Force, the People's Liberation Movement and the Democrats rejected the revision of the Constitution and all rearrangement of the Electoral Code before the 2020 elections. Eric Hundete is the vice president of the Democrats Party.
In favor or against the revision of the Electoral Code, a revision of the Constitution has been introduced at the National Assembly. The people ask us not to venture into an opportunistic constitutional revision.
The opposition's consultation section participants have reiterated their call for the organization of a national dialogue in Benin. It is since 2021 that the opposition forces and mainly the Democratic Party of former President Thomas Boniai want this initiative to be launched to increase the political climate in the country. On January 4, 2024, the Constitutional Court proposed a revision of the Electoral Code and a change of the electoral calendar in Benin. On January 22, 2024, in search of consensus for a rereading of the fundamental Benin text, President Patrice Talon urged a meeting with the opposition. However, the opposition continues to warn of possible friction in the country's political environment. It considers the presidential election candidates' sponsorship system discriminatory and inclining.
Augustine Kohli filed that report. Still on electoral matters, Ghana's Electoral Commission is set to begin the processes to allow elections to be held in November instead of December. This comes after the EC met with political parties at the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, IPAC. According to the Commission, the change in date will allow the institution substantial time to prepare for a runoff should the first round of the election not produce a clear winner. From Accra, WDL's Nadide Tete reports.
The Electoral Commission convened a meeting with the Inter-Party Advisory Committee, IPAC, to facilitate discussions on the EC's proposition to shift the election date from the traditional December 7 to November 7, with the added consideration of making it a public holiday. The EC has asserted its capability to navigate the necessary procedures for this proposed date change.
Looking at our calendar, we are pretty sure that we'll be able to do everything, whatever it takes to ensure that we go through the legal. We are not the final determinants. We need a parliament to approve of it.
However, several political parties, including the largest opposition party, the NDC, argued that implementing such a change in an election year is too brief. Dr. Edward Omane-Boama, the party's Director of Elections and Information Technology, expressed this viewpoint.
The overwhelming consensus was that considering all that the EC has to do between now and the next general elections, the EC will be biting more than it can chew as an institution.
On the contrary, the NPP's Deputy General Secretary Haruna Mohammed voiced support for the proposal, provided the Commission demonstrates its ability to execute the change without adversely affecting the polls.
I think that it is very proper that if we are able to work out the constitutional modalities to be able to set this particular time so that we institutionalize the date so that at least it would not have any implication otherwise on the political system.
Despite differing opinions, the parties have tentatively agreed that the processes for changing the election date could commence after the 2024 elections with implementations in the 2028 elections. Recall that this is not the first time the EC has proposed a change in the general election date. A similar attempt was made in 2016, but it was rejected by Parliament, as announced by then Speaker of the House, Duajao, following a secret vote.
The Constitution Amendment Bill 2016 is rejected at the second reading.
If the status quo persists, Ghana will proceed with the scheduled polls in December to elect a president and members of parliament. For WADR, Nadidi Teti, Accra.
You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Here's a reminder of the top stories. Candidates in Senegal's February 25 presidential election signed National Pact for Democratic Governance ahead of polls. African Union urges diplomacy as it calls for dialogue between ECOWAS and junta-led Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso. Togolese delegation visits Niamey for mediation amid ECOWAS exit announcements. And still ahead in the news, gunmen abduct traveling students and teachers in Nigeria's southwestern state of Ekiti. We also have the press review, guest interview segment, and sports update. Please stay with us.
You are listening to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal.
Don't forget, we are streaming live on YouTube, Facebook, and on our website, WADR.org. Now, gunmen in Nigeria on Monday night kidnapped 6 students and 3 teachers from a school in southwestern Ekiti State, according to officials. The announcement on Tuesday is the first reported abduction involving school children this year. Armed groups have been abducting villagers, road travelers, and students in return for ransom as Nigeria grapples with widespread insecurity, including a long-running insurgency in the northeastern part of the country. David Vincent completes the story.
In an official statement, the Ekiti state government reported the most recent abduction, which occurred as students and teachers were returning from a local trip on Monday night. The school bus driver was also abducted. The state security agencies are actively pursuing the abductors, as mentioned in the statement. As of now, no group or individual has claimed responsibility or issued ransom demands. President Bola Tinubu, who has been focusing on revitalizing the economy, is facing heightened scrutiny due to a surge in the abductions across Nigeria, including incidents on the outskirts of the capital, Abuja, this month. On Tuesday, main opposition leader Atiku Abubakar accused Tinubu of neglecting the country's security challenges, stating that he is playing fiddle while Nigeria is drowning in the ocean of insecurity. This criticism coincided with the President Tinubu's private visit to France for a week. Meanwhile, 48 Nigerian civil society organizations on Monday called on Tinubu to declare a state of emergency on security. According to these organizations, between May 2023, when President Tinubu assumed office, and January 2024, there have been at least 2,423 casualties in mass atrocity-related incidents, and approximately 1,872 individuals have been abducted.
David Vincent filed that report.
This is the newspaper review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Well, up next is the press review segment with WDL Sankule Janko, bringing you highlights of headlines from the national dailies.
Hello there and welcome to this edition of the Press Review. Let's begin today's Press Review with the Point newspaper. And the Point newspaper's lead story this afternoon reads, Government cancels civil servants' proposed allowance increment. Recently, it was announced that the government will increase, the allowances of civil servants. But according to this lead story, published by the Point newspaper, they are holding on to this decision for now. Let's move on to another story, and this one reads, Courts suspends alleged PIU shooter case, goes for mini trial. Recall, someone was alleged to have shot 3 police officers, 2 of whom died on the spot. The trial has been ongoing, and it has been reported that, the court decided to take the trial back to a mini trial format before a decision could be made. Banjul North National Assembly decries rapist murderous pardon. President Adama Barrow pardoned over 30 convicts recently, and among them, surprisingly for so many Gambians, included a murderer and 5 rapists. And guess what? One of these rapists actually raped a 9-year-old girl. One of them also raped a 4-year-old girl. There have been outcry in the Gambia. Asking questions, the morale behind such a decision by the Gambian leader. Veteran journalist Mali Jones passes away. Mali Jones served, as a broadcaster for the Gambia Radio and Television Service. That is the state broadcaster. And he has also served in many portfolios in the government of the Gambia, particularly during the Jammeh era. He one time served as the permanent secretary for Ministry of Information. This other one reads, court denies bail to woman facing 14 charges. Let's move on to the Standard newspaper. The lead story on the Standard newspaper reads, My Fati warns ECOWAS on brink of disintegration. This comes following the announcement of 3 member states in Mali, Burkina Faso and Niger who announced their withdrawal from the bloc. And the former presidential advisor to the Gambia, as well as the interior minister of the Gambia, Mai Ahmed Fati, who also serves as the leader of Gambia Moral Congress, has warned that ECOWAS should be careful. If not, the one-time admired bloc will be disintegrated. Suspected PIU Suter case goes to mini trial. That's another story on the Standard newspaper. Bakau man seeks help to find missing widow. I'm afraid these are the major stories making headlines on Gambian dailies, and it's back to you in the studios.
Many thanks, Uncle Janko, with the press review.
Politics, analyses on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, our guest this afternoon is the Senegalese political analyst Amadou Camara. Camara, who has keenly been following the electoral process, comments on the turnout of presidential candidates at the Peace Pact ceremony on Tuesday here in Dakar and what the absence of the remaining indicates.
So I think there are only 9 parties who had already signed this pact, but this number of attendees could indicate various reasons, including maybe a dissatisfaction with the term of the pact. Some candidates may disagree with the terms or believe it doesn't address their concern, leading them to boycott the signing. But in other fact also, some candidates may doubt the pact's power to prevent future violence, making their presence seem pointless. So that's why I think they didn't sign this pact. But in other terms also, some candidates may choose to abstain as a way to stand out from the other or appeal to certain voters who oppose the current political establishment.
Peace Pact agreement is almost becoming a global tradition in countries where democracy is practiced, and it shouldn't be particularly about terms and conditions, because more so it urges candidates that should they have issues, they should seek to address these issues through legal channels. So it's not necessarily a constitutional pact or agreement. It's actually just bringing people together to understand and embrace a peaceful process.
Yes, I think it is not something legal. It's just like a moral or ethical convention that they have signed between them, and it is something traditionally. But what we can expect from that is that the low turnout may raise concern about a potential lack of commitment to the Peace Pact, which could increase the risk of violence, especially in the run-up to and after the election. The absent candidate may represent groups more likely to resort to violence or inside unrest. That is something which is really likely to happen. But we are very optimistic, thinking that the election will be held peacefully.
Amadou Ba, who is a chosen candidate for the ruling coalition, Beno Bokyakare, wasn't there, and there wasn't at all a representative there on his behalf.
But I don't know what the time that the deadline, if the deadline has been already, or if they have also some days to sign it. Yes, I think it is maybe too early. Maybe Amadou Ba will sign it too. We don't know yet what will happen tomorrow or in the few days, in the coming days. Maybe they will sign it. But if Amadou Ba doesn't sign it, I think it is not a good sign for me of what will forbear the election. But let's bear in mind that during the election in 2012 also, Macky Sall didn't sign a pact of the civil society, as we call les assises nationales. Macky Sall didn't sign it, because he had some reserve. But it really doesn't. It really didn't imply during the election, because at least he won the election. But I think the fact that Amadou Ba didn't sign it is not a good sign of the political environment or in the political landscape in Senegal. I think he should sign it in order to reassure people that we will go to a peaceful election.
Now, do you think going forward, the Peace Pact will make room for a better understanding among all candidates, regardless of their affiliations or party manifestos, that Senegal comes first and their interest comes second?
It can bring a kind of ally between different parties who sign it. Because the civil society and the other political parties just want to avoid what happened in 2019. Because in 2019, I think before election, many people were killed, and during elections, there were 2 or 3 people from different political party who was killed. I think they just would like to avoid what happened in Senegal, and also what happened in the sub-region, as we can see in the sub-region, when there are elections, before election and after election, there are many risks and many different tension. I think they would like only to avoid that. But I don't think that in terms of electorate or in terms of similarity, it can bring different parties to be closer.
Amada Kamara is a political analyst and Newslink contributor. Well, in sport news, South Africa's Bafana smoothly cruised into the quarterfinals of the Africa Cup of Nations at the expense of Morocco. South Africa beat the Atlas Lions 2-0 on Tuesday night to secure qualification into the last 8. Morocco's early exit is the latest shocking result of this exciting Africa Cup of Nations. The Atlas Lions have joined hot favourites and reigning African champions Senegal, 2019 champions Algeria, 2004 champions Tunisia, and record winners Egypt crashing out. Meanwhile, Mali has also booked a place in the quarterfinals after a 2-1 win against Burkina Faso on Tuesday. And we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Christian Makudi and Maudo Ju for the technical assistance. Let's keep the conversation ongoing on our social media platforms, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram, at WADR News, and Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English service. Coming up at the bottom of the hour is the Gender Program 50/50 with Nadide Tete. I am Imo Edet. Good afternoon.
And many thanks